Good.
Oh, fine.
Or at least recently. What's
new?
I mean.
What's new?
I've been sitting there.
Where, we finally got our Zoom that, so we're gonna call the meeting to order. It's
Okay.
April
Call the meeting.
17th, and this is the Senate Ag Committee. And, we're, gonna start out with, right to repair bill, H81. And did we have Brian on and, did we have anyone else? I had, Zachary.
Zachary's here and Christina.
Oh, okay. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Did you have, more that you wanted to leave us with this morning, or are you on to listen?
I'm primarily on to listen. I did send you the language that we talked about in committee yesterday and copied Rick on that. And so hopefully you've seen that email.
I don't. Did you have that one?
I don't.
No, I don't know, it couldn't have come through, Brian.
I can get it too. I can get it too.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay, we can get it now, we'll have it in a minute or two.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Did. That. We could, have you got some time to be with us, Brian, or are you on a pretty tight schedule?
No, I'm on your schedule today, Senator.
Yeah, well, we could have, Zachary, you wanna,
Yeah, we're actually offering the same comments, so we would testify together if that's okay. Christina and I.
however you want.
Yeah.
Yep.
If that's sure.
Okay.
Morning.
Hello. So for the record, my name is Christina McLaughlin and I represent Repair.org. You heard from our client earlier in the session on H81, the Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Bill. And Repair.org is the largest right to repair organization in America. And we're going to walk through our comments on the bill, the most recent draft, which is 2.1, that was walked through yesterday. But before we walk through our comments, I just want to say a few things and clarify that Colorado has enacted right to repair legislation for farm equipment, and it went into effect January 1 of 2024. And currently Michigan is considering a similar proposal. So we at Repair.org and others support the right to repair because we believe once you own a product or a piece of equipment, it's your right to repair that product or piece of equipment, however you choose, whether you want to fix it yourself, go to an independent repair provider, or your local dealer in a situation with farm equipment. And we believe forcing farmers, especially Vermont farmers and Vermont loggers, to rely on dealerships to make repairs on modern equipment leads to inflated service prices and delays in repairs of days to months, which this committee has heard a little bit from, and the House heard a lot of testimony on that. And those delays can and do put farmers or loggers' livelihood at risk. We are a state that has a long history of supporting our farmers and working lands, and this legislation would further highlight our support for these industries. The House supported this belief as they passed this bill, H81, 137 to 2, with tripartisan support. When the bill passed out of the House, the goal of H81 was to ensure all Vermont farmers and loggers have the choice to repair their own equipment or go to an independent repair shop while maintaining the option to go to their local dealer. This latest draft of H81 applies the right to repair to OEMs without an MOU for Vermont. And we understand the committee feels the MOUs are enough, and we truly hope they are. So we now want to ensure if those MOUs end, or they do not live up to what was agreed to, or Vermont's farmers and loggers own equipment that is not covered by an MOU, they are protected. Our working lands community is already struggling, and they are in need of any support that the legislature can give to make sure they can sustain their business and provide for their family. If Vermont farmers and loggers are not able to repair their own equipment in a timely manner, their farms will struggle, as well as their businesses. So we ask you to consider our comments that we'll read through soon as you continue to work on the bill and support this bill to ensure all of our loggers and farmers in Vermont have access to parts, tools, and documentation that is used to make a full repair, and that they can continue to grow their businesses and raise their family in our beautiful state. So with that, we'll go through the bill, if that's okay with our comments.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is the most recent
this is the
draft.
most recent draft, I have
2.1, there might be.
I'm not sure if there's a new draft.
It's on the website.
Oh, thanks. And do you have an extra copy?
I'm just looking right,
Possibly.
yes, thank you.
I'm just, for the record, Zach Cominelli, I'm the Beaver, Vermont Public Interest Research Group.
I'm all set, I got you.
7:00.
Another? I can go on the tree.
2 minutes, I got one picture. Working. Very good.
Thank you. So draft 2.1, with yesterday's date, the 18th. So we will speak to the findings a little bit. We noticed that when the bill was drafted, the last couple times, there was some house language that was removed without noting it, which I think was just an oversight. So we just wanted to highlight the fact that some language was pulled out without the committee maybe noticing or realizing. And I can read through that, but I know we're tight on time, so we can send those comments so that you have that, and we can just point to where that language, but it's just in a few spots in the findings. So with that, we'll move on to page 4.
I think it's still findings. Are you
Oh,
trying to,
still
are you trying,
findings.
I'm trying to move to the,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so page 6 is where
Page
sort of the
6.
substance
Yeah.
starts.
So page 6, and I will say, we do agree with some of the changes. So we are gonna focus on what we want the committee to consider, what that we don't agree on, but we do agree on a good amount. So that should be hopefully helpful. So you'll see in the definition of documentation, there's to perform is highlighted. Starting on line 3, the definition of documentation. We were okay with that change. And if you move down to the definition of forestry equipment, for there, we would like to change the word solely to principally. It was changed in another part of the draft as well from solely to principally, so we think just keeping that.
Just that, you know, that would align with how the definition is for the agricultural equipment, principally off-road. I mean, I think it was noted in this committee yesterday. There may be some equipment that is the equipment that we're all thinking about that, you know, covering that may at some point need to go on a road to go from one location to another. Yes, we're trying to exclude, you know, large trucks, things like that. That's not meant to be here, but you know, in the agricultural equipment definition, we have principally off-road. We think it would make sense to align that for forestry equipment.
What piece of forestry equipment could you run on the wall?
There may be, you know, any kind of harvester or some, you know, something, you know, for the timber that has wheels that literally, we don't want to exclude anything that may have wheels and need to be put on road at any point. If there truly is none, I think that that's potentially fine, but We think that that's potentially unnecessarily excluding, a piece of equipment that we may not be thinking of.
The only piece that I could possibly think of would be it wouldn't be equipment, well, it's equipment, it's a truck with a clam loader on it.
Mhm.
That you can pick up logs and all. That would be a registered type vehicle, but does the committee have any finals of that principally rather than solar?
I can't think of a piece of gear that, I like solar.
I mean, I live up where there's few walkers. Cause we did talk about this and
I would say among the things that are here, we can kind of keep moving. This is not among the larger concerns. So
Okay, I'm okay with it because it says used directly. I can't think of a piece of logging equipment that is used directly.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, you're gonna use it in harvesting, and then just, I don't know.
I don't think this is something we can spend a ton of time on.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
And there was some other language removed from there, and we won't read through that, but we just wanted to note that, by removing that language, the need due for leave outs and forestry equipment, it was, this was talked about yesterday. On line 11, it continues saying including equipment to use to construct, maintain, or install infrastructure necessary to and associated with the logging operation. That was struck out, which we are okay with, but we just wanted the committee to know that that means this might be more limiting for forestry equipment, but again, not something we need to spend too much time on, we just wanted to make that aware to you. So for the definition of independent repair provider, right below forestry equipment, there means a person operating in the state. I know there was discussion yesterday about changing this to physically operating in the state. We are okay with that. We don't think that's going to limit what we as a group thought it may limit. So I'm not sure if there was going to be a different draft to that language, but if physically was inserted, we'd be okay with that. But obviously, if there was a very different definition, we want to review that before commenting.
Yeah, there was a previous version where it was had to have a physical location, like a physical retail store. That would be a little bit more problematic, but physically operating the state, I don't see how an independent repair provider could operate in the state without physically being here. They might not have a storefront, but they need to,
it'd have to be.
they have to be here at some point.
Lots of people run around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 6 for memorandum of understanding, this is a new definition from the House passed bill. That was added, and since this bill has changed a bit to now apply to folks without an MOU, we understand that you want to define this, but we want to make sure there's a very strong definition of memorandum of understanding so that, this bill is appropriate. And so we want to propose just striking C where it says or similar organization that advocates on behalf of farmers.
Which one?
We are
Line 20?
yeah, on line 20. We would keep it as means an agreement that is A, B, and C, but strike after American Farm Bureau Federation or similar organization that advocates on behalf of farmers. So we would just want to keep this to the American Farm Bureau Federation, since the MOUs are between the OEMs and the American Farm Bureau Federation. We are concerned that perhaps a group will pop up that wants to skirt this, if it is in statute,
So you wanted to take out similar organization?
yes.
Yeah, just because since similar organization isn't defined, it's
Yeah.
difficult to define, if the basis of having an MOU exemption, basically you're exempt from this law if you're in an MOU. The MOU needs to be something that, we at least feel is kind of trustworthy, stood up by, an organization with some clout. The American Farm Bureau, these are, that's, a legitimate group, they're, representing, thousands of farmers across the country. If we say or similar organization, it opens up just, somebody saying, oh, I have an MOU with, I can't imagine like what the organization is. Like, we don't define what that is and using that as the basis to be exempt from the law. So limiting it to MOUs that are negotiated by the American Farm Bureau would be our recommendation there.
Any problems, we'd have to take out or similar organization.
Are there similar organizations now?
There are similar, there's the National Farmers Union who are pro right to repair, and they have not entered into an MOU because they think these MOUs aren't strong. So I mean, there are hypothetically similar organizations that might meet this criteria, but I think unless you define what a similar organization is, like membership size, like legitimacy, just limiting it to the American Farm Bureau is preferred, because similar organization could mean anything. It could mean a group that represents 8 farmers, and
Wouldn't be very similar, but
it's open to interpretation. I think
uh,
I don't know. I guess,
I hate to pick winners and losers, right? I mean, there may be other organizations, but
yeah, I don't think it'll change the bill any, remove that. Because if there was they'd still have to, I think, come back and get it added in. They just couldn't say, I'm the ABC
yeah.
farmers organization, I'm on in. We'd have to, somebody would have to, okay, some legislator would have to, okay.
yeah, I would.
So we'll,
Straight up.
So on page 7,
So can I just, so if a trade organization, we'll
say the
say,
Grange.
or the American Beef Producers Association came up with an agreement, they'd have to come back to the
Wouldn't
legislature.
say, I mean,
Right, but
how would they get their name in there? They didn't.
I wouldn't have any problem with it if it was an organization like that.
No, but you don't really know. I mean, what? I would think they would have to come back to get approved any, just to get on, to get put in here. Wouldn't they? I mean, how would
Well,
they get added to the law if they didn't? Just by saying they were a similar organization. It's not good.
And to be clear, like, this isn't setting the list of what OEMs are exempt. It's saying if you want to be exempt, you have to have an MOU with, and in this case, we're saying the American Farm Bureau Association. So for agricultural equipment, I would assume, there's, like we said, 80% have this MOU with the American Farm Bureau Association. If the other 20% of OEMs want to be exempt, and you pass the law as we're suggesting, they would need to then enter in that MOU. They would need to either enter into that MOU with the American Farm Bureau Association, and they would be fine. Or if they entered in with another organization, then that other organization would then need to come to this legislature and say, hey, this MOU, we think, satisfies it. And you would need to then, modify this law to say that that MOU also qualifies. So really, I mean, this is essentially it. But I would say if you limit this, this is encouraging the other OEMs to come to the table with the American Farm Bureau and join that MOU
For consistency.
for consistency.
So you're working for the membership of Farm Bureau?
No, not at all.
you must, well, in some respects, you would be.
We're just asking to have some sort of, if the MOU is the basis for being exempt from this law,
What's-
we're asking that the organization that is setting that MOU, we assure that it has some legitimacy, basically.
so it might be helpful to hear from Brian Carpenter. I don't know.
Yeah.
One way or another. I don't know if we need to stop each time.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the flip side of this is, other than pushing everybody toward the,
I mean,
that Farm Bureau has. I mean, this, I should think this would encourage the way we have it, it wouldn't lock it in so that it's just Farm Bureau, but, I mean, there's a door that's got a little bit of a crack for the American Beef Producers Association or.
If you, I just threw that out, but there are these subgroups, and if I'm sure that somebody that grows strawberries, they probably have some national organization too. And they probably have their specialty equipment that they've got. If they develop some, I don't have any problem with that.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm zooming out and looking at the fact that this law encourages all manufacturers to supply what's needed for farmers and loggers to repair their equipment. The MOU is sort of a subset of people who want to be exempt from that. So I think beekeepers and strawberry growers and all those people would expect their manufacturers to follow this law, supply the diagrams and tools and software that they need. But if those manufacturers want to do less or similar, but have their own control over that MOU, then there's gonna go into this category. But I think the whole point is to have a law that just covers everybody outright. And the only reason we're dealing with MOUs is because there's an MOU preceding the law, right? If there weren't an MOU, we wouldn't have a law, and once we have a law, we might not need MOUs for new organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I could see your point talking about a little small, but yes. Well, we'll, okay, just put a question right there.
So on page 7, we just want to comment on the definition of owner, which starts on line 4. I believe Brian Carpenter shared language with you to add to that definition. And we are happy with as it is written right now in the bill, but we would want to see that language before we comment on what was proposed, which is fine. We don't have that in front of us right now, but we just wanted to comment that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the question is the owns or leases, we think obviously owns or leases should stay in there. There was, I think, what we heard in testimony yesterday, there may be within a lease agreement, that, this is kind of typical, even with automobiles, like if you lease a car, you exclusively do need to get something taken care of at the dealership that's leasing or whatever. So if there was language that is already similarly in here with regard to like, this doesn't change warranty agreements, if there was a language in here that was similar to, this isn't meant to change lease agreements, if that's part of the lease agreement that you exclusively
Yeah, I think
getting.
that's on page 11 or it.
Yeah, and-
Later on.
Yeah, and that maybe didn't specifically call out leases, so again, I don't know if, Brian is operating language, we want to take a look at that, but we potentially wouldn't have a problem with that, because again, that is not the point, like, if that's in the lease agreement, that's the agreement, so.
Yeah, Brian, did you want to comment on that, on the lease part?
That was the language that I provided, which states that, see if I can find my proposed language.
It's for an owner.
It would be under limitations, it would be additional, it would just say, this act does not alter the terms of any agreement between an owner and any person related to lease and warranty terms for agricultural equipment. And I know that there's already some language in there, but it doesn't mention lease. It's talking more about warranty agreements. And so to include the lease terminology that I've provided, I think would help clarify that, and then you could leave lease in under the owner.
Yeah, because farmers are leasing, I understand, some of these big tractors now rather than owning them. And we
correct.
put leases in there to make sure that they were, that they would be covered under this agreement. And we could, so you wanted clarifying language.
we're okay of including lease in the owners, as long as we have the limitation that it doesn't override the contract, any contractual terms written within the lease.
It does.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, we'll take a look at the
You guys-
specific language, but I think what he is describing, if it's what I think it is, that's the language, I think we'd be okay with that, yeah. But just reserve the right to read it in detail, but I think generally that's
Yeah, we're not trying to change any
existing.
agreement, yeah, we're not trying to impact those. So moving on to the definition of repair, which starts on line 11. We don't really believe we need to define repair, because this is more about parity, but we understand that the committee may want a definition of repair, and so we would be okay with having repair means to maintain, diagnose, or fix agricultural and forestry equipment, resulting in the equipment being returned to its fully functional conditions. We want to make sure that we would not be okay with being returned to its original equipment manufacturer specifications. We would rather have that say fully functional conditions. And we, the A, B, C, and D, would like to strike that. There's a lot of reasons as to why you may need to reset an immobilizer system or security related electronic module to make a repair. And because if you were locked out, you might need to get back into the system to get that piece of equipment working. B, where it says modified from original equipment specifications, that embedded software code, the embedded software code. This is already allowed as legal to modify software under copyright law. So we don't believe that's necessary in the bill. C, change any equipment or engine settings that negatively affect emissions or safety compliance. This is already covered under the EPA Clean Air Act. So there's already laws supporting that. And D, where it says download or access the source code of any embedded software or code. This is also controlled by Copyright Office, and owners can already download and access software. So we don't see the need for that language either.
What damage does it do to have it in?
Will, to make a full repair, you may need to do exactly what's listed in A, B, C, or D. We just said a couple of these are already protected under law, so we don't need to call it out specifically. But folks might have to do what is outlined in A, B, C, and D to make a full repair. And so by calling those out, it limits a farmer or logger's power to make a full repair.
Yeah, so this is sort of new to the bill, this definition of repair. And the reason why it's new is because the bill has changed and we're generally okay with this change. Originally, the bill said that the OEM has to provide any of the sort of parts, tools, and documentation that they already provide to owners and independent repair providers that they already provide to their authorized repair shops. You'll notice in this draft that they provide to their authorized repair shops is all taken out and changed to they need to provide the parts, tools, documentation that they need to repair the equipment, So that's where it leaves it. So that means that you need a definition of repair, which you have here. Then when you include what repair does not include, that now would give an OEM the ability to say, well, this particular piece of equipment would allow you to, in addition to repair, would allow you to potentially modify or reset an immobilizer and potentially withhold that equipment on, or that part, tool, or documentation on the basis that it doesn't allow you to repair based on this definition. So, and you'll see this when we get to the, and we think this is best dealt with in the limitations, and there's limitations part of the bill. Part of the issue here is that there are parts, tools, and documentation that are necessary to complete a full repair. And it's possible that those same parts and tools and documentation may allow, a farmer to potentially do, or they may even need to do, like reset the immobilizer, something that is, a safety or emissions concern. But they need to maybe do that temporarily to complete the full repair. So our whole position on this and the whole thing kind of undergirding, the philosophy undergirding this is that we shouldn't be withholding those parts. We should say you should have all the parts, tools, and documentation that you need to make a full repair. And then give guidance that you shall not use this to permanently override emission systems, permanently, disable safety features. But you may need to do some of those things temporarily to complete a repair. So that's why we think A, B, C, and D pretty much entirely is a problem in that definition.
I-
And again, the limitation section
Does this.
does this, yeah.
And I'll just say as a broader point, I think we just want to, put sort of these concerns on record. You may ultimately, obviously it's your prerogative to not take them. We would encourage you to still pass this bill. There's potentially further process here, and we may not, ultimately get all the changes that we want. We just want to know what we see as, might be potentially limiting to people who are trying to do repairs. So we just kind of want to put that out there, I think.
And because if it's already federal law, and federal emissions,
Yeah.
I don't see any harm with saying that twice. Sometimes I've had to say the same thing to my help 5 times. And then every time it gets a little louder, you finally say it.
Are you saying that the members of your committee don't always listen to you?
No, you do very well. I mean, my help at home. Okay, thank you, go ahead.
Just check.
So on page 8, the definition of tools was changed from the House Pass language. And we prefer to keep the language that struck out here, which was what the House passed. If farmers don't have the capability, they can't fix a piece of equipment fully. So you'll see that what's stricken out, that farmers and foresters need to be able to provision, program, calibrate, etc., do parts to be able to fully repair their equipment, which is why that was called out. Original manufacturer specifications contradicts any updates. I understand the concern for maybe some safety and emissions, but again, we already have that noted in the bill. Folks cannot, hack safety and emission standards unless it's temporarily to make a full repair. Should be and is addressed in the limitation. So again, we just want you to consider this to keep what was passed by the House. If there are any questions.
I think you folks would like to have just had us rubber stamp the House bill.
Well, we are skipping what we agreed to, so in the interest of time. I will say 12 were trade secret. We're happy with that change. It was defined in the House Pass bill. There was a lot more language. We're happy with that change since trade secret means trade secret. So we're good with that. And then as you move down, starting on line 14 on page 8, where they strike out that language, starting on line 14 and 15. We would be okay with striking that if the definition of repair is sufficient, as we just explained. So that's really, those two are connected. And we are okay with adding enabled on line 17 there, no issue, that's highlighted. And as we move to page 9, there's some more language that was struck out, and we want to keep the House Pass language in this area. Copyright law already allows farmers to back up and restore 100% of the software, including source code that comes with the machine for purposes of repair. And so we wanted to make sure that, we would like this to stay as is because it was thoughtfully drafted. And on line 6 there, where they add may satisfy its obligation to, we're more than okay with that. So moving to page 10. At the top of page 10, there was some more language that they removed. We would like to also keep the House Pass language, as it ensures parts pairing isn't allowed. We want to make sure that parts pairing is not allowed, as you know, folks like Deere and Apple or even are selling parts, but refusing to allow those parts to be used without their special approval. So they often require a physical visit and not just a simple download, which is again limiting folks' right to repair in a timely manner.
And this parts pairing concept is notable. The right to repair bill that was just enacted in Oregon, which does not include agricultural equipment, but deals with electronics. It was the first to have what is in here, like this strict requirement in there, which is that OEMs cannot require parts pairing as a condition for repair. It's just one additional barrier that they can potentially add. So that's why we're concerned with that.
Can you define parts pairing for those who want?
Sure. So I can explain it best with a phone. I don't want to attempt to explain how it might work with an agricultural piece of equipment, but there are similar concepts here. If your phone screen breaks and like an Apple iPhone, and that screen has a lot of things that it does now. It can read your face. It can censor your swipes, all of these kinds of things, and you are able to get maybe a part, a replacement screen. Maybe it's third party. Maybe it's even from Apple itself, and you take it to an independent repairer, and the independent repairer will try to put it together, and all of a sudden you will get a notification. You're locked out of the phone. You can't use this phone. You need to have a specific part that is paired with your phone, like it pairs to the.
Like Bluetooth kind of pairing, like
It's
what?
similarly concept, but
recognize each
it can
other?
recognize that specific part. So you then need to go to Apple to get the paired part that is specific to that. So that's an issue.
So you want to keep this language in 3?
Yeah, cannot. That'd be.
So we are bottom of page 10, where the starting on line 20, where that language was added, we are okay with that. And then if you keep going on page 11, there was some language taken out starting on line 16. Again, we'd like to keep the house pass language because of the fact that there are cases where you have to temporarily deactivate a safety notification in the course of a diagnosis or maintenance or repair. And as long as the equipment is returned to fully functional condition, the safety notification will be put back into place. So we would like to keep that language. And then moving down on page 11, so starting on line 18, access any function of a tool that enables independent repair provider or owner to change the settings for a piece of agriculture or forestry equipment in a manner that brings the equipment out of compliance with the original manufacturer specifications or any applicable state, federal, or local law. We don't think that the original manufacturer specification should be included in this language. We don't know why the OEMs would be able to regulate this if there are federal, state, and local laws. And if it's legal, the OEM should not be able to dictate how you use your equipment. So we would like to strike the original manufacturer specifications from that section, given the fact that there are laws in place. We don't believe the OEM should be dictating that.
Well, how do you make sure that they don't tinker that up then? If we don't regulate it to some degree.
It is regulated.
Right. So we're not suggesting remove the entire
Yeah.
section there. The original language that they cannot access any function of the tool to bring equipment out of compliance with federal, state, or local safety emissions. That's what the original language. That's what we proposed. We're not sure why.
Are you advocating to have a state inspector then go around and double check? I mean, if the purpose of having that language there, if you have, I don't know if any of you run any of this computerized heavier stuff. If you fix it, I fix my whatever, but it really doesn't run right. Where do I have to go am I gonna come to Montpelier to see a state person or a federal person? To say, I don't know, I fixed my rig, but it's not running right. You go back to the OEM, right?
Sure.
Okay, so then they say to me, well, you screwed this up yourself because you didn't do the repair properly. So I mean, you gotta have a check and balance here. And I mean, I don't know where you're coming from with this one, but
So again, we are not saying, you're already not allowed to bring the piece of equipment out of compliance.
well, it's already against a lot of
Yeah.
used drugs, but we have people everywhere using them, right?
Right,
And
yep,
it's against the state law.
yes, we could say that about many laws.
Yeah, and so,
So I think here what we're trying to say is, we would rather have folks listen to the state, federal, and local laws rather than the OEMs getting involved when there are laws already in place. We already know that when you buy a piece of equipment, you're not supposed to go out of compliance. That is already known when you purchase a piece of equipment. I'm sure it's in the contracts when people own or lease a piece of equipment. That's already a given. We are concerned about keeping the original manufacturer specifications language because we don't think that they should be dictating this. This is already up to federal, state, and local laws.
yeah, but somebody has to kind of be the policeman. And I mean, I think there's a lot of times you tinker your stuff up, you're gonna get a little more power out of it. So you turn this instead of a half a turn, 3/4 of a turn. And I mean, and it doesn't run right. So then where do you go with it?
Well, you can
go
still
to
go to the,
OEM.
I mean, nothing about this
Yeah.
language, even if you remove what we're suggesting remove, would prevent you from going back to the OEM, and they might tell you, you messed up.
Yeah.
And they would be in their right to tell you that they
I
messed
don't
up.
see the harm of having an in
Well, to,
other than,
yes, so I guess we should be clear like why we see the harm. Again, if it is used as a basis to withhold a piece of equipment, if you're saying that we think that you might or I shouldn't say equipment, should I say, part two of piece of documentation, that you may use this to take it out of compliance with OEM specifications. Then that becomes a problem. But anyhow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on page 12, we are okay with all the highlight language from line 6 through 12. We're okay with adding that. Once you get to line 13E, section E here, we're not quite sure what this language means, and that's more of a question for legislative council. We're not clear on the intent of what that means. That's we're not sure what it means. We'd like to remove it, but obviously we'd like to get more context here from legislative council or whoever may have it, as we're confused as what lines 13 through 15 are trying to get at.
well, I think, it goes along with the rest of it, and it blends in there, that's what I would say, but, you must have an attorney that can look at it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had people who look, I mean. Again, maybe, it might just be, maybe it's just redundant language. I mean, it says if federal law preempts part of this chapter, then that's preempted, and the part that isn't preempted is not preempted, which seems to just state the obvious to me, but.
Yeah.
So it was more just
Yeah.
a bit of confusion
Yeah.
there, but.
Our lawyer was confused as well, so. So line 16F, we would like to change this language. And I believe it goes on to the following page. If we would like to nod to the MOU, which is where the direction of this bill is going. We would like the language to include that these MOUs have at least met the conditions of the bill. If they want to go further, then that's great. But the MOUs are not subject to enforcement. For this folks who are when this bill goes into effect, they would be. And we would actually like to point to language in Colorado law, and I'm not gonna read through all that language right now, but we can share that. Because we just think that, we just wanna be sure that folks are complying.
So would you suggest taking out the word substantially on 17? Like, how do we make this stronger so that the MOU isn't almost this is the law, but not quite?
I mean, so the Colorado language is like completely different. You can take a look at that. If you didn't want to go the Colorado route, I would say changing substantially to like entirely would be that if you wanted to do like a minimal change, that would be an improvement. Basic, because I mean, the way that to be clear, like we don't support exempting people under the MOU, but if that is the direction that is heading, then you know, it would make sense to us to basically say it should either you're gonna meet the law and you know.
Right, with your MOU.
With your MOU, and if the MOU is as strong, then great, then you do everything under the MOU, and then you are not subject to enforcement, right? Is basically how it would work. And if you don't choose to enter in an MOU, then you now are, you know, subject to the law and subject to enforcement. So, so for that to work, the MOU would have to be as strong as the law. It would be kind of
Right.
the way, you know, we would think about it.
That's a great point that it's not subject to enforcement. Right. Which the law is, which is a great reason to have a law.
How would you feel if the termination could be affected by either party instead of just the OEM?
Termination
The MOU.
of the MOU.
Terminated, withdrawn, canceled.
Yeah, so in the event. Enter the MOU, understanding such a
I think that would be.
by either party.
Should one be able to, you know,
Yeah, I can't see why that would be a problem. I mean. Yeah, I mean, if the American Farm, in this case, the other party would be the American Farm Bureau, or, you know, whoever's representing farmers, if they decided that the MOU wasn't working and they withdrew, I think we would want, you know, this then to take effect. I mean, if either party withdrew, that would imply that somebody decided that the MOU wasn't working, right? So.
Yeah, it takes two parties to make an agreement, so one of them either one of them should be able to withdraw.
The way
We'd
it's
like-
written, it was just that the
Yeah.
OEM is.
That's a little bit, you know, yeah, I can't see how that would be a problem to change. that.
Yeah. And then I know the 30 days was a big discussion point yesterday. Obviously, it depends on where this section goes. I think we prefer something ended that the law would then immediately apply, but again, it's up to the committee to decide that. And then our last point is we would prefer that this bill take effect on January 1 of 2025. But again, that's up to the committee. I know other folks have asked for 2027, so we may meet in the middle, but that's up to you.
so it was 26.
It's 26 in this
26
draft.
now, in the House passed, it was 2025, but obviously,
Oh, they were gonna make it retroactive,
I don't think you allow that. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Those are all our comments. Thank you very much for listening.
Send those.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to?
Oh, sure, that'll be great. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Brian had to take a quick break there. Either you have to.
Sure, I'd love to do a quick traffic break. That works for you.
Yeah. we will.
Okay.